Back in 2021, when it was announced that the once competent writer-producer Russell T Davies would be returning to Doctor Who as showrunner, I, like many other fans, had hoped that Davies was looking to try and course-correct the many creative mistakes of then-exiting showrunner Chris Chibnall. Unfortunately, it turned out that not only was Davies not at all interested in fixing Doctor Who, together with his partners at the BBC and Disney, he was actually looking to double, triple, and quadruple down on the show's overly political, modern-day agenda peddling. And while the first few 60th anniversary bait-and-switch specials with David Tennant may have performed somewhat decently in the ratings, until now, Ncuti Gatwa's turn as the Doctor has been an unprecedented ratings disaster, with the most recent episode only being viewed by around 1.58 million viewers, which is an all-time franchise low. But numbers and statistics aside, as a reviewer, I always try to give every new episode of Doctor Who a fair chance, in hopes that it'll actually be good. And in this video, I will be discussing my thoughts on Lux, the second episode of the second season of Disney Doctor Who. But before we dive in, if it's not too much trouble, please make sure to like and subscribe, as it would really help my channel. The episode starts in 1952 at a movie theater in Florida that's showing a Max Fleischer-style cartoon of a creature called Mr. Ring-a-Ding that looks like a cross between Bugs Bunny, Porky Pig, and the Roadrunner, and a female character that looks and sounds like a cross between Betty Boop and Olive Oyl. Then, through some type of strange convenience, the film that's being projected to an audience in the theater somehow absorbs moonlight, bringing the 2D animated creature to life. This causes Mr. Ring-a-Ding to become self-aware and taunt the audience members, repeatedly telling them not to make him laugh. Then he leaves the movie screen and enters the real world, and it's implied that something bad has happened to all the people that attended the movie's screening. Next, we're back on the TARDIS with the Disney Doctor and Belinda, exactly where we left off in the previous episode. It turns out that the TARDIS still can't seem to reach Belinda's time in 2025, so the Disney Doctor puts together some type of BS device that'll possibly help them solve the problem. Meanwhile, the Disney Doctor also asks Belinda if she has a girlfriend, boyfriend, or other friend, making sure to cover all the different, options? The Disney Doctor then tells Belinda that they're in 1952, and even though she's been an insufferable grumpy sourpuss until now, she's kind of warming up to the idea of time travel and actually wants to go outside, but she just needs a change of clothes. And then, true to form, the Disney Doctor grabs Belinda's hand and dances around in the most flamboyant way possible as they change their wardrobe into a more 50s look. And if you feel like until now you haven't seen enough identity politics in this episode, well, you're in luck, because you're about to get a major dose of it. For starters, right when they arrive in Miami, the Disney Doctor looks at his hands and speculates that it's good that they arrived at 4 o'clock in the morning because that way, maybe people won't see them, and if it wasn't clear, it's because of the color of their skin. Now, to be fair, discrimination during this time period did historically exist, so making a nuanced reference to it would have been fine, but since modern-day Doctor Who is a show that constantly lectures people, this initial comment by the Disney Doctor is really just the tip of the iceberg. But we'll get back to that. Belinda, who's a nurse in her own time, sees Rock Hudson's name on the theater marquee and explains that in a course she took about HIV, she studied about Rock Hudson, which is rather odd. I mean, yes, Rock Hudson did have HIV, but how much time do they really dedicate to him during a medical course? Anyhow, they go to the theater and see that there's a bunch of memorials and tributes for people that have disappeared, and a sign that the city council has shut down the theater. Even though Belinda initially wants to head back into the TARDIS, the Disney Doctor convinces her to stay so that they can investigate what happened to the missing people. Belinda then tells the Disney Doctor that he's just like Scooby-Doo, but he corrects her and he tells her that he's actually more like Velma because, of course he is. At this point, the Disney Doctor tells Belinda that they should risk a coffee at the local diner to try and gather more information. And for those who didn't get it, the risk here is that they're diverse people in an age of discrimination. Luckily for them though, the diner is empty and a rather flamboyant barista lets them sit there for some reason. The Disney Doctor and Belinda then see the mother of one of the moviegoers that disappeared and want to talk to her, but because of their skin color, they're told that they aren't allowed to sit at the same table as her. Luckily though, the flamboyant barista is willing to make another exception. Belinda is then shocked to learn that there's discrimination against diverse people in 1952, as I guess that's something that she didn't learn about in her Rock Hudson HIV course. The mother of the missing moviegoer tells the Disney doctor that seeing the TARDIS has given her hope, although no explanation is given as to why. In addition, even though this lady is presented as a local Florida resident, she has an Irish accent and sounds like she just downed a pint of Guinness. And after this rather pointless conversation, the Disney Doctor and Belinda go into the theater, where it turns out that the projectionist is still showing movies late at night, even though the theater has been shut down. But when the projectionist sees them, he tells them that they need to leave. The Disney Doctor then mentions that he knows that he and Belinda are not allowed to be in this theater because of their skin color. Again! Because of course, this has to be mentioned every 5 minutes in this episode for some reason. And I gotta feel a bit bad for Linus Roach here, who is actually quite a decent character actor, but you wouldn't know it watching this shit. It turns out that the projectionist isn't actually an istophobe, he's really just trying to keep them both from running into Mr. Dingaling, but it's too late. Initially, the Disney Doctor thinks that Mr. Dingaling is friendly, but he quickly realizes that he's evil. And when Mr. Dingaling laughs and it sounds like that melody we've heard in the Giggle and the Drag Queen episode, the Disney Doctor realizes that Mr. Dingaling is actually a harbinger of the god of chaos or something. The projectionist stalls Mr. Dingaling by projecting a song, so the Disney Doctor and Belinda run to his projection room. There, the projectionist reveals that Mr. Dingaling brought his wife back to life from a film or something. So in an effort not to lose her, he must bow down to the cartoon and do what he says. Mr. Dingaling then enters the projection booth and points projectors at the Doctor and Belinda, and as a result, they become two-dimensional animated characters as well. The Disney Doctor and Belinda then realize that the more they talk about their feelings, they gradually become more three-dimensional, because that's really what this show needed more of. People talking about their feelings. Again. Belinda talks about feeling sad, and the Disney Doctor talks about what a failure he is, how his planet Gallifrey is in ruins, how he's the last of the Time Lords, once again confirming the events of the controversial Timeless Children's storyline. And now that they're both back to their original form, they decide to start pulling frames from the screen in an attempt to escape the film they're trapped in. And it seems to work at first, as they find themselves back in the theater again. But when a police officer wants to arrest them because of the color of their skin, again, based on a tip from the diner lady who has betrayed them, the Disney Doctor realizes that this interaction isn't real and that they're actually still stuck inside the film, so they start moving the frames again. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is where the episode really goes off the rails, because for the first time in Doctor Who's existence, it decides to break the fourth wall in the most ridiculous, embarrassing, and cringe way. You see, while stuck in the film, the Disney Doctor and Belinda show up in the living room of the only three people still left watching the show, aside from maybe Disparu, Will of the Fans, and myself. And these three modern audience dweebs we're introduced to are so thrilled to see Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor in person that it makes them cry. Again. The only part that's somewhat amusing here is that one of the three fans mentions the hashtag RIP Doctor Who, which is something that many longtime fans have been saying since 2017, so I suppose it's Russell T Davies' way of mocking his detractors or something, although I don't think this silly scene is actually the flex that Davies thinks it is. Because Doctor Who is not a show that needs to be self-aware of itself. It's not a fourth wall breaking parody like Spaceballs, and while the show has gone creatively bankrupt in recent years and is already a disgrace, this type of stupid humor only cheapens the entire atmosphere, mythology, and lore of the show even more, if that were even possible. At this point, the Doctor and Belinda come to the conclusion that if they stop the film from moving, it'll heat up and burn, which will set them free. And what do you know? Their plan works and now they're back in the real world. And even though the Disney Doctor's hand gets burned, he explains to Belinda that because he bi-generated, he still has enough energy to heal himself. Why does that stupid bi-generation mean that he can heal himself? Yeah, definitely don't think about that either. At this point, the Disney Doctor confronts Mr. Dingaling, and he even seems less flamboyant than usual and more confident for about 2 seconds before Mr. Dingaling ties him up and turns him into a damsel in distress. For a minute there, when Mr. Dingaling is sucking the energy out of the Doctor, it almost feels like there's a chance he's going to regenerate, and I won't lie to you, I was kind of hoping that would happen, but nope. I guess he had enough bi-generation energy for that as well. The Disney Doctor then hints to Belinda that sunlight will destroy Mr. Dingaling. How does he know that the sunlight will destroy him?
Hey, relax, guy, trust me.
Belinda asks the projectionist for matches so that she can blow up the projection booth. At first, the projectionist is a cowardly weasel and won't help, but when the ghost of his wife shows up and gives him a nudge, he seemingly blows himself up with all the films, creating a hole in the wall, exposing Dingaling to sunlight and causing him to evaporate into the atmosphere or something. And after this entire nonsensical series of events, all the 15 missing people return, and their family members are conveniently already there to greet them. And as the Doctor and Belinda are leaving with the TARDIS, the very annoying Mrs. Flood shows up again and teases that crazy things are going to happen, which I couldn't care less about, but what's especially frustrating here is that even though this episode was really bad in its execution, there was a kernel of an idea that I didn't necessarily dislike. The concept of an animated creature in a film coming to life and becoming a menace is actually decent, but man, Russell T Davies is so bitter and overly political these days that he simply can't get out of his own way creatively. The constant references to segregation were over the top excessive. I'm not saying it didn't exist in that time period, and addressing it in some way could have been reasonable, but not when it's brought up every few minutes and the episode ends up just feeling like one long lecture. Davies seems so obsessed with people's skin color that he focuses more on that in his screenplay than actual character motivations and development, like Mr. Dingaling, for example, who just seemed to be doing what the script required, but with no real depth or logic to his actions. And sadly, it really feels like Russell T Davies doesn't care at all about the very Doctor Who fans who he's built his entire career on, which is rather ungrateful on his end, because without the initial success he had with the show during its 2005 revival, he wouldn't be in the position he is today. I mean, that being said, I acknowledge that during his first tenure on the show, he did do a great job with the franchise, but I suppose it's because at the time, he was actually expected to prove himself rather than just push his favorite ideologies on people. And as long as Doctor Who continues to head in this creative direction, I can't imagine anything happening that will actually save it, but as it continues to go up in flames, I will continue to review the remaining and perhaps final episodes, and if you want to stay updated about all of this, please make sure to like and subscribe. Together, we can call out Russell T Davies, the BBC and Disney on all of their nonsense so that our voices are heard. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day.
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.